Welcome to How UX Solves Problems for Developers and Their Clients. Save time, money, and sanity. I'm Debbie Levitt from P-Type, short for Prototype. We're a full service UX agency with staff in the United States, UK, and Italy. We cover the full spectrum of user centered design, including user research, personas, copywriting, information architecture, interaction design, wireframes and prototypes, usability testing, and visual design. Get to know us at pty.pe. My start with computers was in 1979 when, at age 7, I got put in a class to learn how to program BASIC on the Commodore PET. So, of course, you probably wouldn't call me a programmer, but I've got a little bit of that in my heart. Now, normally when I give this presentation live, the next thing we do is ask the audience how they work with UX now. But since you are watching this in a video, I'm not going to ask you that. Especially if you work in a developer shop that builds websites, apps, and other systems for outside clients. You are probably not thrilled when you hear the client changed his mind again. He wants it like this now. Stop what you were doing and build it this way. QA people, you'll have to wait a little longer to get this revised version. By the time this project is done, someday, you'll probably feel like you built it 15 times. Well, imagine a dev project where you build it once, QA it once, release it, and actually move on to something else. This is the happy, wonderful dream that working with UX offers. In the next 40 minutes, we'll take a look at how and why. So, what is UX? UX is the more scientific, psychological, and problem solving side of product, software, interface, and service design. Our goals are typically to include happier, more loyal customers, ease of learning and use, shorter, more intuitive processes, and many of us are also interested in accessibility for people with mobility, vision, or other issues. And accessibility is really important. This was a couple of years ago in America. There was an American football game, and I think it was Nike who made the uniforms, and they decided, let's do something different for this game. We'll put one team in all red, and we'll put one team in all green. Well, this is how it looked to someone who is colorblind and can't differentiate red and green. This is where accessibility started coming into the conversation. They really got blasted for this, for not having checked with anybody. Even former football players were tweeting that they were colorblind and they couldn't follow the game at all. So it's important on your websites and apps, not just on football uniforms. Now, many people think that UX is just wireframes, these blueprinty type of mock ups you see coming from UX people, but no. UX is also processes and approaches that attempt to answer things like, what will this product or feature be? What does this thing even do? Who are we really designing for? What would work most naturally for our target audiences? What do we need to tell them, and how will we tell them that? How will they navigate getting from place to place? How will this look and work across different devices and sizes? How do we solve the problem the customer is having? A wireframe is something we can deliver to explain and blueprint this, but it's not all UX does. UX has a process called user centered design. It's a little bit like our agile process in that we wouldn't tell you to leave a step out of your software development process. So, our process is best when we can do all of these steps. So, there's a lot of steps here. So, just to kind of gloss over them quickly, of course, we start with requirements. And we also like to start with an audit of the current product or experience if we're just coming into the project and something already exists. So we'll normally screenshot it, make comments, and really get to know the existing system. Next, we'll do the same for competitors. We want to audit their product service system so that we have a little bit of an idea of what's going on in that landscape. And we like to do user research. We want to talk to your real customers or potential customers or archetypal customers to learn more about what are they doing now? How does that work for them? Where does that not work for them? Where are their pain points? We'll talk a lot more about that later. But blowing through this, content analysis and strategy. Content should have a strategy. I like to say content without strategy is an FAQ. That's just dump everything on this page and hope people read it. But content is all about copy, Photos, media, how much do we put? What does it say? Where do we put it? That does require strategy. Information architecture has to do with the structure and hierarchy of this website, app, or system. How do we organize that in a way that's really logical and meaningful to the customer, not just what makes sense to the business? Remember, user centered design is nothing without thinking about that user, the customer. Next, we move on to interaction design and usually prototyping. This is what most people think of as UX, but of course, UX is a much larger animal. Interaction design is where we're normally making wireframes or clickable interactive prototypes that would show the process the user is moving through, the layout, buttons, menus, error messages, all different states of a page. This is where all of that gets designed. And it may or may not have visual design. It may look a little bit more medium fidelity, which is what we call what you saw in the last slide. Some people like to jump right into full visual design. But at least for me personally, I'm not an artist, so I like to work without that and give this to an artist later who can then give it its branding and visuals. We love to test this stuff. Please don't leave this out. It's important to validate that the design we've come up with is a great execution of the idea. We don't just want to put our concepts out to the public because we could be embarrassed, and we'll talk about that later. We want to test with users and validate or invalidate our hypotheses so that we can choose whether or not this needs further iteration and refinement. That might be our next step. If something doesn't do well in user testing, let's improve it before developers build it. Then, of course, put the visual design on it if that hasn't been done yet. And finally, wrap up the documentation and deliver it to developers. So you can see if we follow most or all of this process, by the time it goes to you, the developer, you have the final version. You have a version where the client shouldn't still be thinking about things or changing their mind or wondering what features to put in. We will handle all of that. Execution matters. A good idea executed poorly can still fail. Think about some of your favorite apps and services. Are the ideas really that groundbreaking? It's a dating app. It shares photos. It messages friends. Or is it the execution of that idea that gets you hooked on this particular app? You might say things like, "This is so easy to use. I didn't feel like I was learning something new. It worked just the way I expected. I always know exactly where to go and how to accomplish my task." Well, that's where UX really shines. Because we are looking out for what I like to call the four horsemen of bad UX, which is my little trademark. And they are frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction. If any of these are in your existing product or service, then we need to fix that. That's bad UX. That's a bad user experience. And as a UX practitioner, as I'm designing, I'm looking for anything that someone might feel is frustrating, confusing, disappointing, or distracting. And that way I can make sure that what I'm delivering should be free of that. It should be a frustration free experience. I know that sounds obvious, but if this is not part of your process and approach, it's probably not happening. So beware the four horsemen of bad UX. Working with UX leads to happier projects, better software, and clients more likely to be successful. A client who stays in business is more likely to need you again, you the developer, and tell colleagues how awesome your dev work is. Because poor UX can hurt or kill a product or sometimes an entire company. Take a look at this graph, unfortunately not colorblind friendly, that Adaptive Path put out some years ago. If you can see the green line, this is what it costs to change your mind as a project moves forward. Notice on the far left, when we're still in the project definition, the requirements, some of the decision making, it costs very little to change your mind. We're still in discussions, nothing too much has happened yet, so that's a great time to change your mind. Next, someone like us or your UX person might be doing user research. And that user research might be based on the definition of the project. So if you were to change your mind there, we would have to redo possibly some user research. But again, doesn't cost that much. We haven't gone too far, and certainly we haven't given anything to developers. Developers haven't written a line of code yet, so still inexpensive to change your mind. Next, in the middle of the graph, you'll see design iteration. That's where, hopefully, your UX person or team is working on brainstorming concepts, designs, iterating through those, and hopefully doing their user testing. Even here, it doesn't cost that much to change your mind because it would just be UX reworking what they've been doing, possibly having to redesign and possibly having to retest. But of course, the cost of what's coming next is much higher compared to changing your mind here. Next, we have implementation, and the graph really starts to jump up because this is where developers, QA, engineering are all firing up. Everybody is working on building this product, and changing your mind here could be quite expensive because it would probably have to go back to UX to be changed, hopefully tested again, delivered to developers, and built again. So that can really increase that cost. And finally, the cost at launch or after launch is tremendous because not only would it have to cycle back through UX and dev and QA and all the engineering steps, but there's also the cost of public opinion. There's the cost of your negative app reviews, negative social media, negative blog posts, negative Silicon Valley blogging about you. So think about UX as something that joins your process to save time, money, conflict with your clients, and probably some anxiety. Because by finding feature, execution, or usability problems before code is written, UX is really helping to save the day. Now, let's take a look at what your dev process might be now if you're not working with a real UX professional or team. The client tells you what they want. You build it, you test it. Now you put it up on a staging server or out on production, and then the client changes their mind. That means now you've got to cycle back to, okay, client, now what do you want? Okay, we'll build it, test it, produce, develop, launch, release, whatever it might be. Eventually, you release something live and hope the client's customers like it. But look at how different this would be if you worked with a UX, individual, team, agency, whatever's best for your company. Client tells us what they want. You guys don't get very involved just yet. We cycle through our user centered design tasks. We iterate, we brainstorm, we work with the client on what this product is and how it will look and work. We then test it on those real or archetypal users to ensure that it's a great solution. Now, once that's been validated and assuming the client's happy with it as well, then we package it up and get it to you, ready to build once. And that means if the client changes his or her mind, it cycles back to us. We need to work with that client on what these changes will be. Why are these changes coming up now? And then, of course, do we have to do all this design, testing, and delivery again? Now, typically, when we bring this up to a client and we let them know what it's going to cost, suddenly, magically, they don't change their mind. So sometimes we're not just handling them changing their mind, sometimes we're able to talk them out of it, which is usually a breath of fresh air for everybody. And oh, the savings. So, as promised, we save time, money, and sanity. Time because the client often needs time to decide how does he want this to look and work. And that can often grind the project to a halt while everybody waits for the client to make up her mind or work with her team or committee or get all the stakeholders together. We can take that off your plate. We handle those people. Money, of course, because very often there are conflicts about money. Your client expects constant rebuilds as he or she changes his or her mind. And very often the client magically expects to not pay for that. Hey, you said development would cost X. Why is it costing more? And they don't always understand that. And that also depends on how your proposals and contracts are written. We can help there too. And of course, your sanity. You need more of that, knowing how some of these projects go. It would be great, I think, for developers if you could build this once. Have less conflict with your clients. Focus on what you do best and not try to do UX if it's not your strength. And let UX professionals run interference and handle all these changes. So, how do we handle clients like that? And how do we do it so well? How do we save all these things for developers? That's because we see client requirements as the start of a discussion, not the project to do list. We're not afraid to ask questions or push back. Because your client might have an idea, you say okay, and you build it. We might think they're out of their minds. Now, we don't necessarily tell them that, but we work on getting them customer focused so that we can design a better solution or better execution of the idea. Whether you're a startup or you're working with a startup or an established company, if you don't build something that solves customers' real problems, is easy to learn and use, and delightful, you can still fail. So UX not only solves problems, but we find them also. So here's an example. Let's say the client comes to you and says, we're getting some complaints from customers. We think they want better graphs in the analytics area of the product. You might say, great, we'll draw you up some new graphs, we'll build them, implement them, and get them fired up. And so you install new graphs at the end. But if we were brought into that project, we would look at a much bigger picture. Are the graphs really the problem? Are they the only problem? What are the competitors doing well or poorly? Can we interview customers and see what they expect from this site or this analytics section? And what are the real problems? We'll check the navigation. Is it hard to get around this site? Is it hard for people to find what they tend to need most? We'll do fresh interaction design for easier processes, clearer and more informative screens. And then, of course, we want to test on real or archetypal customers before having you guys write code, which gives us the chance to iterate if it's not the best solution before you're building it. So, UX likes to start with research, especially for startups. We're asking questions like, are we sure that's a problem? How are people handling these things now? What do they love about how they do this now? But what are their struggles, pain points? What are the workarounds they've come up with for how they're doing this? What are their priorities? How would your product, feature, or service fit into their lives? And how much do they have to change or learn to use your product? These could be potential red flags. So, are you solving a real customer problem with something the customers would really use? Especially for startups. Are you really solving a problem? This was a real startup I met in San Francisco some years ago. They told me they're building an app to help friends find places to go drinking. And this is not a thing. You often hear this called the product market fit. It's the nice way of saying, is this startup or company solving a real customer problem by building something people would need and use? And very often, if the startup is following Silicon Valley advice and going to talk to customers, they often ask the wrong questions. They say, we're building an app to help friends coordinate going to a bar. Would you like that? Yes. They want to say yes to please you or avoid potential confrontation. And would you use this? Yes. They want you to feel good about what you have or plan to build. Would you pay monthly or extra for this? Of course. Nobody likes to say, no, I expect everything you're doing for free, even if they expect that. And would your colleagues and friends use this? Oh, yes, definitely. At best, that's a guess. They have no idea who would use what. UX research done by real UX practitioners can help remove the ego and the bias because they might be thinking, this kind of sucks, but I like this guy. I'll tell him it's good. But our research could help lead to a pivot or change of direction. And better to know that now than after you've put in months of time, your own money, or other people's money. Some UX practitioners use rapid prototyping, and this improves the process even more. Because rather than us writing code or you writing code, we can build realistic interactive prototypes of websites and apps. The best UX prototypes will also use conditional logic and variables for multiple user paths and outcomes. This helps it be even more realistic rather than a more linear click through model. And at P-Type, we love to use a piece of software called Axure. Axure. That's our favorite, and it allows us to build very realistic prototypes, including conditional logic and variables, so that when we show this to you or test it, it's much more realistic. But why do prototyping at all? Well, we use it for brainstorming, collaborating, iterating, and exploring different solutions. But also, a startup could use it to pitch to investors. Before having developers build something out, we could build a very realistic clickable prototype that would let a startup show their idea around. We also use the prototypes for user and usability testing to see if our proposed solution connects well with the target audiences. And of course, we can then deliver this interactive model to you, the developers. And I found that developers love this more than they love getting a 50-page Word document. They love getting my prototypes because it lets them experience the solution. Let's take a look from a real app where prototyping could have helped these people a little bit in their process. Now, early on in this app, you could choose a meditation track you wanted to listen to in 2 easy steps. Step 1, choose your program, 21 Days of Calm. Step 2, check which day you're up to, press that number, listen to it. That's pretty easy. But what happened when this company decided, let's add some steps to that? So for this release, this app included 2 extra steps between choosing your program and choosing the meditation to listen to. When I chose 21 Days of Calm, first I got this broad look at what was going to be in this program. Okay, I didn't need that before, but hey, there's an obvious start button. Let's get started. Oh, oh. Okay. That's not exactly what I was expecting. This is a pop up asking if I'm ready to commit to 10 minutes each day for 21 days of meditation. And if you say not now, you don't get to listen to the meditation. And if you say I'm ready, you do get to listen to the meditation. This, of course, looks like it would make sense if someone just wireframed it. If someone showed you these layouts, you might say, yeah, these are good looking screens. This will be great. Someone on the product or business side probably said, hey, we need to find more ways to get people to commit, make our app stickier, get them more involved in their meditation. Let's ask them to commit. But if they had prototyped this before releasing it, and tested it with users, they would have quickly seen how frustrating this actually was, and a little bit judgmental, because not only did I have to click I'm ready, or I guess tap, it's an app, every single time I wanted to hear a track. But even if I wanted to listen to an old track again, I had to tap this. Even if I wanted to listen to something in a different program, I was now committing to that program as well. This didn't make sense. And if someone had prototyped this and walked through it many, many times to live it and bring it to life, they would have quickly seen this is not faster to use. This is not easier to use. This is not solving a problem for me. This is definitely making this process longer, weirder, and in my opinion, a little bit judgmental. Now let's take a look at how developers and teams of developers can collaborate with UX. The key to UX success is time. Say you're an agile development shop. It wouldn't make sense for someone to say, hey, for the next few sprints, we don't have time to estimate, no real time to discuss things. Just do as many things as you can from the backlog, and then we'll release it. We don't really need stand ups or retros. Well, you would tell me that's not agile. The same is true for UX. I have walked into Tuesday project kickoff meetings that asked me to have final wireframes on Thursday. This makes sense if you think UX just draws boxes on a page. But now that you understand that our process has more components, then you know the key is time. We need time to cycle through all of the relevant areas of the UX process. We don't always do all of these steps for every project, and certainly not for every request or ambiguity, but we are a creative process. We need time to investigate the problem or potential feature, consider various solutions, and hopefully test, refine, and iterate before we pass you something to build. So let's take a look at how Agile can work with UX. This is still hotly debated. Nobody has the magic bullet, but I'll give you my opinion on how this should work based on different companies I've worked at. UX should be a part of sprints, but we have to start weeks or months ahead of kickoff. Remember that in a sense, the user centered design process is iterative waterfall. We have to go through research, designing, testing, and iterating before a developer gets to see it. While engineering may be able to break a product into logical sprints, UX is often designing the whole product or feature. We can't really say, this week I'll just design step 2 of registration. And developers don't get early drafts of our designs to start building. We might be comparing multiple solutions and executions. We need time. We don't want to have anything built until we're confident we have designed the best solution. Include UX in iteration planning, but be understanding that depending upon the features or stories, our work tasks and timing vary greatly. We might just need to wireframe or prototype something and we can be done quickly. But this might be something new that requires research and or testing. We need more time to get this ready for developers. So get stories, bugs, issues, Jira tickets, everything. Get them to us as soon as possible. Then include us in sprints, remembering that we have to be 2 or more sprints ahead of you. UX should collaborate along the way with developers to make sure that what they're designing can be built given the technology, resources, time, and budget. And did I mention UX needs time? Now, if you're still waterfall, we can work with you too. Because, hey, we're waterfall too. Depending upon the size of the features or product, we could need weeks or months. But UX is not a mysterious black box. Stop telling yourself that and don't tell other people that. We don't like it. We are going through our steps and tasks in user centered design. Project managers should account for this and bring UX in way before developers expect to start. Now let's talk about lean. And for the purposes, I'm going to use jogging rather than software. UX sometimes disagrees with product managers and sometimes engineering on how much of a product do we build and release as an MVP. People get very hung up on the idea of the minimum viable product. What's the least we can build and ship? Now, normally when I do this live, I now ask you to get your phones out and vote on which do you think is the minimum viable jogging outfit. But of course, you're watching this on a video. I'm not doing this live, so we can't vote right now. But let's just continue. So everybody wants to wave the lean flag, but UX knows we have to find balance. This is why for UX, the V in MVP stands for valuable. What's the leanest product we can build and release that the customer will still feel has great value? An American TV commercial from my childhood reminded us that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. This is especially true for that first time your customer installs your app or visits the website. Will this be too lean for them to really use, enjoy, get hooked on? UX experts can help you or your startup or your client decide what is the right MVP. I took this picture after baking some muffins because I felt like this was truly the minimum viable nonstick pan. This is sold as a nonstick pan, and I'll use it, but this is not exactly the nonstick pan I was expecting. So remember to think about that user and what he or she expects, even from that early version of your product. And here I am in May 2018, and this is a hot story. By the time you hear this, it may not be, but is anybody following this whole Vero story? Vero launched an app saying they were the next big social network. Yeah, we've heard that before, but they offered something that really enticed people. No ads, no algorithm, see posts in order without them being messed around with. People started signing up like crazy. But bloggers, as well as famous tech media sites, started writing extremely negative posts about these guys. Is the problem the idea? No, nobody was against the idea of a social network that would really solve the problems people have on Facebook, Twitter, etc. It was the execution. The colors were kind of weird. The linked active words looked really too much like disabled words. You had to create an account with your email and your phone number. Who are these guys and why do they need both? Terms of service were confusing, and for months people thought that they were getting royalty-free, non-exclusive rights to use everything you posted. The dark color scheme, people felt that was night mode. Why isn't there a day mode? And you couldn't delete your account. Oh yeah, on top of that, it was a paid service. These are the execution of the idea, of the product. The idea to create a better social network might be good. The idea to make it an app might be good. But the execution is getting them horrible reviews right now. And will people reinstall and give them a second chance? Will tech websites be in a rush to write a follow-up story, say next year? saying, "Whoa, they're better. They figured it out. Everybody go back and try it again." Some people are saying we should forgive them because it's an MVP or maybe a beta. That's something your company can tell itself internally, and everybody slaps each other on the back. But your user doesn't care. He doesn't care if it's a beta or an MVP. He wants something that works well, consistently, and makes him want to keep using it. So UX believes that MVP stands for minimum valuable product. If we're being lean, what's the least we can build that will solve users' problems, have great UX, and leave users excited for the next release? If you strip your MVP back too far, you run the risk of releasing something that users don't love. If they don't adopt it and it doesn't gain traction, the lean universe would probably say it's a failure. We know that you don't want to release a full version 1, but let's find the happy medium between the absolute minimal thing we can launch and that full version 1. We want to give them a nice slice of cake. We know you want to just ship the cake, maybe with just a handful of icing, but we want the cake to be thoroughly baked, have all the right ingredients, and taste good. We see the possible outcomes if you don't do that. Work with your UX practitioners or partners on prioritizing the right features for a minimum valuable product. And remember that collaboration will go both ways. UX should include developers when designing. At the very least, we have to make sure what we plan to build fits into the time, budget, and technical capabilities of the team. But collaboration goes both ways. The construction company can't look at the blueprints and decide there's another way they'd like to lay this building out. Once upon a time, an Android developer at a company I worked at built something I didn't recognize at all. Where'd you get that design? Did the person before me wire that? No, the Android developer told me the engineering architect lead wanted to change it. He liked this idea and told the Android developer it was okay to build it. No, 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 no. I once passed wireframes to a visual designer to do the graphics. She sent me back something that didn't look like my wireframes at all. When I asked her why she changed my wireframes, her exact words were, "Oh, did you design that deliberately?" Yes, a lot went into the design. We have a lot of tasks we like to do as part of our user centered design process. We're designing very deliberately. When UX delivers it, please stick to it. If you find problems, questions, or ambiguities, please collaborate with UX rather than doing something different. So add UX to your process. If you're already doing a little bit of UX, now's your chance to rethink it and improve it, augment it. Add research, information architecture, interaction design, hopefully prototyping, and user testing. Are you adding UX practitioners to your company for the first time? We have a workshop for that. I'll mention it later. I found that there are 3 ingredients for UX success. First, you must decide that the user's needs, motivations, habits, and even safety are more important than what the business might want. If you need your dentist to fill some small cavities, he doesn't instead suggest that he remove the teeth and replace them with implants because it makes him more money. You hate the mechanic that wants to do more work on your car than the car really needs. When you know a company is doing that to you, you hate them. So why do this with your software? Get focused on the user and trust that the revenue will be there if you build the right thing for the right people. Second, you must make sure that the culture at your company respects UX. You hate when people misunderstand or don't respect what you do. Don't do that to someone else's job. Great UX practitioners are expert problem solvers and product designers. You should listen to them and respect what they are doing. They know what they're doing. But that assumes that third, you have hired great people. Whether they are internal to the company, freelancers, or from an outside agency, it's important to choose wisely. Going cheap by having people who aren't really UX practitioners just push out wireframes or run flawed research won't help you in the short or long term. Hire carefully. These 3 work together, in that hiring the wrong UX people will give your company ammunition to disrespect or circumvent UX. Not valuing the user over anything else means that wrong decisions will be made in all areas at all levels. And if you hire great UX experts but don't respect them, don't give them the time they need, and don't follow their designs, you've also killed the pyramid. These three work together. Can anybody do UX or wireframes? Sure, and anybody can try to fix your car, even if he's not an expert on fixing cars. Can anybody do UX or wireframes? Sure, and anybody can try to fix your car, even if he's not an expert on fixing cars. But my graphic designer says she does UX. Great! Ask her about her approach and process. Find out which user centered design tasks she will be doing for you. If she says, I make wireframes, I would kindly suggest she's not a strong UX practitioner. If you asked a developer her process and she said, I type lines of code, you would probably not accept that as an answer. Good UX practitioners are often UX specialists. Sometimes you need a specialist. Your regular doctor can handle a lot, but not everything. Can I take a boot camp and then do UX? Sure. And I can take a developer boot camp and announce I'm a developer. You're a developer. What kind of programmer would you imagine I am after a 3-day workshop? This is what kind of UX practitioner I imagine you might be after a boot camp. Serious processes and projects require experts and specialists. Rather than trying to do our job, exclude us, or replace us with people who don't really do UX, work with us. Build your in-house UX team, work with freelancers, or choose an agency like us, because we help create a better product. We design the software or system even when the client isn't sure what they need or want. We're not afraid to challenge the client. We handle the client who can't decide or keeps changing his mind. Rather than scattered ideas, we will deliver clear wireframes, prototypes, and documentation. We handle what you probably dislike: reading the client's mind, writing and testing code only to find out the client wants it to work a different way, clients changing direction, clients afraid to change direction, clients expecting you to redo work and not paying for the time. Well, they can iterate all they like during the UX process. Let UX experts take work off your plate. We'll handle the client moments you dread and fear. Mark us up and make money on our time and work. Hey, why not? Building it once helps you look and be more efficient. Clients will love that, and you're going to love it. Reduce fights over what was in scope and what should cost more. Estimate the job from our designs and documents. Startups, you really need UX to help you refine what problem you're solving and for what audience for the best idea execution. And we've got a new workshop coming out. If you're listening to this before summer 2018, it's probably not out yet. If you're listening after summer 2018, it is out. Either way, you can go to our P-Type Academy, which is ptype.academy, and pick it up. It's available for pre-order or actual order. And it's called Understanding UX and Collaborating with UX Practitioners. And it's aimed at all of the non-UX workers, non-UX teams, and companies who have struggled to work with UX in the past. You don't understand UX. You don't understand what we're doing. We're some weird black box that derails projects. We hear this all the time. And I'm now trying to fix this by creating a workshop that will finally teach you all the things you need to understand about UX and much more in depth about how to work with us. There's even a manager and leadership add-on module on how to deal with conflicts between teams and how to hire UX workeries and management. So go check that out over at P-Type Academy. But thank you very much for watching this presentation. I'm always happy to answer questions about UX in general, UX services, finding the right UX practitioner, or of course, if you have questions about what our company does, we're happy to help. We'd love to find more partners who are development shops and agencies and looking to bring better and broader UX into their world. So thank you again, and check us out at ptype.pe, and I will see you around the internet.